I want to just carry on a little bit from where we were earlier, but I want to read a passage from 1 John chapter 3, verses 11 to 18, which I haven't given you, so I forgot. So I'm just going to read it. You can turn into your Bibles. If you're not sure where 1 John is, just open your Bible and pretend you've got it open there, or look at the back, or use the index, which is why God put it in the Bible. Verse 11 of chapter 3 of 1 John. The message you heard from the very beginning is this: we must love one another. We must not be like Cain. He belonged to the evil one and murdered his own brother Abel. Why did Cain murder him? Because the things he himself did were wrong, but the things his brother did were right. So do not be surprised, by my brothers and sisters, if the people of the world hate you. We know that we have left death and come over into life. We know it because we love our brothers and sisters. Whoever does not love is still under the power of death. All who hate others are murderers, and you know that murderers have not got eternal life in them. This is how we know what love is. Christ gave his life for us. We too then ought to give our lives for our brothers and sisters. Rich people who see a brother or sister in need, yet close their hearts against them, cannot claim they love God. My children, our love should not be just words and talk. It must be true love, which shows itself in action. Now, I'm paid for a job to go and tell people the gospel. And do you know what? I'm convinced that we've overcomplicated it. And actually, there are people like Tim, and this isn't knocking Tim, who would spend hours and hours teaching in Bible colleges about the gospel. And that's all really good, because actually there needs to be that depth. But actually, ultimately, the gospel's really simple. We make Jesus overcomplicated. And I'm a Southampton fan. Many years ago, I had a meeting with an organisation called Faith in Football. And it was headed up by a guy called Mick Mellows, who used to play for Portsmouth in the 50s. And then also Linvoy Primus, when he was in the Premier League, was involved in it as well. So Mick said, I want to come and talk about what you do. He said, come down and meet me. He said, where should we meet? He said, I'll come to our office is at Fratton Park. Now, I'm a Southampton fan. That's not where you go. And I debated whether I should wear my Southampton shirt, and decided that out of respect and fear for my own life, it would be best if I didn't. And I went down to Fratton Park to this den of iniquity of football. And I went in, and he showed me this stuff. He's done what we do. We get kids to read. And then as a result, at the end of it, they do some football stuff. It's like, okay, and they said we wrote our own books for them to read, and of the Bible stories. And if I'm really honest, I'm dying inside at this moment, going, oh my word, how awful is this going to be? Why can't they use a decent normal reading book that works really well? But no, they're reading Bible stories that they've drawn, illustrated, and everything. And he says, you're with me, aren't you? You're sitting there going, yeah, no, this is awful. And he shows you this, and they're okay. They're okay. They were not the most polished I've ever seen. They weren't bad, but they're okay. And so while I'm still sitting there thinking, again, they could have done something else. And he said, and the thing is, they're just Bible stories about Jesus, and as the kids read them, they just fall in love with Jesus, which felt a little bit like an axe to the stomach, if I'm really honest at that point, after being super judgmental. He's going, because it is, as people discover Jesus, they just fall in love with him. Because the gospel isn't complicated. They weren't going a really complicated gospel. They were going, you just get to know Jesus and you fall in love with him. And beside the amazing educational benefits of this programme, which were just unreal, there were just kids that were going out from tough parts of Portsmouth, just learning to love Jesus, because they fell in love with a story of a man that did amazing things. And the gospel is so simple in that God loves us so much that we are the only creation that are made in the image of God. That's amazing. Why are we made in the image of God? Because God wanted someone to have a relationship with. And then that got broken because we got stuff in the way and we sinned. And then we keep doing it. And actually, the history of mankind is that God is pursuing us, but ultimately sent Jesus, his son, to die for us so we could be forgiven and have a relationship with him, that was willing to sacrifice. So why is K-pop Demon Hunters about sacrifice? Why are so many other stories about sacrifice? It's because at our DNA, at our core, at our very centre of our being, there's the fact that Jesus has pursued us and sacrificed us, and it's part of who we are. We can't escape it. The gospel is so straightforward, because the amazing thing is you don't even need to do anything to be good enough to earn it, which is about the only thing I can think of. Everything else you've done, you do your exams at school, you do your badges, your swimming badges. If you might not do swimming badges anymore. I did swimming badges, that was rubbish, and I would have been doing a sinking badge. So you do those things, you do various things, you've got to do well in school, you've got to do well here, you've got to do well at home, and it feels like everywhere we go we're being told we've got to do something amazing. But actually Jesus says you just got to come to me, just as you are. What an amazing gospel. And we make it overcomplicated. But the trouble is, once we've made that bit overcomplicated, then Tim goes back to do another lecture. And it's really hard. But you're here, I might as well make the most of it. And James spends ages studying on it, going, this is how you live the Christian life. And we make it a little bit overcomplicated. And again, it's important to look at these things and think about them. But actually, we make it far more complicated than it needs to be. Because we tend to make it a bit like a list from the Pharisees. And that's what the Pharisees did. The Pharisees took the story of God and just made it more complicated and put rule after rule after rule. Yet we do exactly the same. I think there's so many things I've been told I shouldn't do as a Christian. And then, I remember, I was amazed. I hadn't grown up hearing this, but when I was a student in Bath, I was at a church, and people were saying that you can't knit on a Sunday. Now, I'm taking it as a win, because I wouldn't knit on any other day. It was the easiest thing to stick to ever. But you can't knit because it's work. It's like, really? Oh, it does seem like work to me, knitting. But then there's and you get other people saying you can't dance on a Sunday. I've heard people say that, quite old school, but you can't dance on Sunday. Yeah, you can dance in worship but you can't do it on a Sunday. Doesn't make sense. So we tend to make these rules, but actually it's really simple. We've overcomplicated it. Because actually it's right here in 1 John 3. And it's right at the end in verse 16. It says, that, basically it says, it starts off actually, doesn't it? It says, we must love one another. Now that's quite straightforward. It's just a little bit complicated. Because if you look over your shoulder at the other people behind you, have a quick look. They might not always be easy to love. Just don't tell them. And because some loving other people sounds great, but it's really hard, isn't it? Yeah? If you're married, put your hand up. You can put your hand down. I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up for this bit. Do you sometimes find it hard to love the person you're married to? I'm just looking like... I just want to nudge or something like that. But actually there were days where it's like... James is going, it's easy. Because I've just said I'd choose work over holiday. But actually, loving other people isn't always easy. And the people we love... It's easier to forgive them for the things that they're not perfect. None of us are perfect, are we? Is anyone perfect? Is it just me? So I can say my wife's not here, my children aren't here. But actually, loving others isn't straightforward. But as we go further down, then it says, this is how we know what love is. Christ gave his life for us. That's it. That's the definition of love, is that Christ gave everything up for us. Jesus didn't hold anything back for you or for me. Which is that mind-blowing moment of the gospel is so simple. Is that Jesus gave everything for you. What an amazing statement. But then it says, this is when it gets a little bit harder. We too then ought to give our lives for our brothers and sisters. Now, I don't think that means we've got to go around choosing to give our life and die for everyone else around us. I don't think that's what's being written. In fact, it's not what's being written. But actually, what it means is love has to be sacrificial. We cannot love other people without sacrifice. It doesn't work, okay? And actually, I tell you what, this is a lot harder to read when you're young. Well, not even when you're younger. when you've got brothers and sisters who are, as in your family, we too then ought to give our lives for our brothers and sisters. It's a lot easier giving your life for someone who's not your brother or sister, isn't it? Actually, does anyone fight with their brother and sister? It's not, it won't just, it's not just you guys when you're young, it's some of us who are older. And actually, have you got a particularly annoying, but don't say if they're here. You just realise I could start an argument. If you've got a particularly annoying brother and sister, because actually, the people close to us, my sister can get under my skin like no one else. And more to the point, I can look for a fight with my sister, even at the age of 21. I can look for a fight. No, I'm not. I'm 55. And even at the age of 55, I can look for a fight with my sister and an argument with my sister like I don't with anyone else. And I can have a good argument when I want one. And we do. The people closest to us, we're closest to, and we love the most. Often when we're sometimes to be less loving, as opposed to other people, because actually other people we put a show on, but the people we're closest to we're just more natural with. But we ought to give our lives for our brothers and sisters. And I want to think a little bit about that this morning, because it's easy to say we give our lives, but actually what does that mean? And that means it's sacrifice. And sacrifice is different for each of us. I want to tell you a story that happened to me the other day. I was been in St Mark's junior store. I've been doing collective worship, and we'd gone in two cars because the team had come over in one car, and it's just around the corner from my home. So they drove home in their back to the office in their car. I go, and I get just round the corner, and there's a roundabout at the bottom, and there's this massive queue, and I was like, oh, it's roadworks. It's bound to be. It's always happens, isn't it? It's roadworks. And then I noticed that all the cars start going around the car at the front. And then this lad pulls up and he goes down. And then some other people start coming out and they start to push this woman. I get out and we go and push this woman around the corner. It's an old lady. And we get her just off the road and into a slightly safer place. And this woman's really upset and she's really stressed and has done like, have you got breakdown cover? And she says, yeah, I do. I said, well, I'll stay with you. Thinking, I could so do without staying with you this morning. I've got lots of things I could be doing, but I'll stay with you, that's fine. I'll do that. And there was, by this point, there was just three of us left. There was the woman there was me, and these two other people. And one other guy was going, he could stay around for a bit as well. And then this other woman said she'd go make us a cup of tea because she lived just across the road, which is great. And so we all did different bits. And then this lady's explaining she's on her way to We Buy Any Car to sell a car that's just broken down. Man, she's done. I knew I should have done it before, and I'm thinking, yeah. And so we said, not a problem. He said, let's see what we can do. We'd see what he did. She said, could you start the car? I said, I'm trying to, the clutch is on its way out. I said, okay, so I start the car. I said, right, your cable's okay. That's not a problem. And I tried to get it in first gear. And oh my word, it's so crunchy, it's unbelievable. And it's the only car that was harder to get in first gear that I've ever driven is when my clutch had properly gone on the back of the car. It was impossible. And I'm going, there's your problem. I could get it in second, I could move it, I could get it going. And in the end, to cut a slightly long story short, is she's there talking about the fact that she'd lost her husband, and her husband had bought the car with her years ago, and she was reluctant to get rid of it, even though she had a better car, and her children had been on her for getting rid of it. And so I said, okay, well, we'll go with you. We'll drive in your car, I'll drive it for you, because I think she was struggling to get into gear full stop, and this other chap was going to follow us. And then we did that, and then we spent so long at We Buy Any Car, he had to go, and then we then got back to my car and drove her home. And she was like, oh, why have you done this? And it's like, and I have told my team to carry on without me, by the way. I just don't want to look completely negligent at work. And then we go there, and I said, well, ultimately, I think maybe God is a reason why I'm here today, because I happened to be coming back later than I normally would. I had to deliver something else to the school and come back later than I normally would have done. And I happened to be there at that moment. I think maybe God's saying, you're not on your own. For a lady that felt quite isolated, maybe God says you're not on your own. And then later that week, Matt phones me. He'd gone down to the corner shop to go and buy some lunch. And he phones me and said, can you bring the first aid kit down? And it's like, yeah, what's happened? Just thinking, I want to know what first aid kit bits I need. He said, someone's been assaulted. And it's like, okay, I'll take the beef first aid kit. And I go down there, and he's there with this chap, and someone's bleeding from his head. And I thought a little old guy had fallen over or something like that. And I'm looking for this older person who's fallen, and I can't see it, but I can see this younger guy covered in blood. And so again, he's been assaulted. Cut a long story short, we treat him and said, look, you need to come back, and you've had a head wound, you need to come back, and you need to just get a cup of tea or something with some sugar. So he comes back to the office, and we're sitting there for ages, and he's asking various stuff, and we're talking, and at one point I said, well, maybe there's a reason why God brought you here. He said, where am I? He said, you're in the back of a church, we're Youth for Christ. He said, how did I not realise that? There's a massive sign about seeing young people's lives changed by Jesus. And then we spent a while talking to him about the fact that maybe God is interested in his life. And he said to me, but I was just outside a church yesterday and said I would never be accepted if I walked in there. And I said, I think you've seen today that you have been. And as far as I'm aware, neither of those two have given their lives to Jesus. We've not seen them since. But actually, it's just a snapshot of a week that we had. They weren't young people, but by choosing an active decision of sacrifice of what we could have done, an active decision of love, then we get an opportunity to show people the gospel. And our sacrifices can be great or small. But actually, very rarely is it easy. It talks in the Bible that rich people who see a brother or sister in need, yet close their eyes against them, cannot claim that they love God. That actually, when you love God, your heart of compassion naturally goes out to other people. And if you've got wealth, you choose to use it to benefit other people. That doesn't mean you can't be wealthy. It doesn't mean you can't have some nice things. But it just means that we go out to those people who have need and we want to help them as well. And it's really easy to go, that's okay, I'm not wealthy. Phew, I'm off the hook. But actually, I wonder what that would look like if we changed it and we didn't limit our imagination to those things. And I just wonder if you changed it today, if you're able-bodied or your neighbour's less so and needs some physical work done and you don't do it, can you claim to have the love of God? Possibly. Or maybe if your neighbours can't speak English and you treat them less for it, can you claim to have the love of God within you? That we live in a polarised world, don't we, where everyone's so shouting at everyone else that they're not right and they're not good enough. Where's Jesus in that conversation? And I genuinely, I'm hearing loads of shouty things from people saying they're Christians that have got nothing to do with the Bible, nothing to do with Jesus, but they're claiming it is. And actually, if you come down to that, what does love look like? And actually, love is quite tough, isn't it? Love isn't soft. Love isn't just being a walkover. Love isn't just simply saying yes to people and agreeing with people. Love isn't saying it doesn't matter what you do, it's okay. Love is so much more than that. Love is where we just guide people. We point them to the right path. We help them. We care for them. We stop and be with them. Do you know, the greatest way of showing love is our time? Isn't it? That actually, you know that someone cares for you when they give you their time. We don't think they necessarily love us if they give us their opinion, or even if they just give us pity. We just think they pity us. But when someone gives time, it makes a huge difference. And all the way that lady kept on saying to me, shouldn't you be at work? And it's like, unfortunately, I'm the boss, I can get away with it. But actually, at that moment in time, I don't think Jesus minded whether I was telling her about him or a young person about him. And but actually, what was blowing her away is that someone would give the time to help someone out for no personal benefit. And so, as we've gone through thinking about sacrifice today, I just wonder what you would choose to sacrifice for other people. If you turn that into a reality today, what would it look like for you? Is there something you need to do for your neighbour? Is there something you need to do for your sister or your brother? Your real one, not just one in church. Is it encouraging someone who's lonely to turn up for table tennis on Saturday? Is it being willing to forgo the last bacon sandwich so that someone else can have it. There's lots of little things that we do. Is it sometimes just doing a surprising thing? Do you know what? When we were up in London, we were working in a church up in London. Timothy had just been born. Jessica was about 2. Timothy had just been born. It was a really, really hard season. And it was probably the first 3 months of Timothy being born. And we had a lady come around to our house with a bunch of flowers. And she said to me, I keep thinking I've got to buy Steve and Sarah some flowers. There's some other people in our church. I said, and every time I do that, she's going, but God tells me it's got to buy for you, but it makes no sense because this is happening in Steve and Sarah's life. There's some significant issues at that point, I think. And he said, but every time I say, I'll take them to Steve and Sarah, God says, no, take them to Paul and Leah. And it was such a low moment. And it's a silly, inconsequential bunch of flowers at the end of the day. But she brought them around and goes, I love you and care for you at the moment that life is really tough. And sometimes we don't realise that the little things that we do make a massive impact. And if we're truly going to be a people that communicate the gospel to this community, the only way we'll do that is by showing people that love. That is how we do it. And I was chatting to someone the other day who was a Christian. Me and James had met someone who was thinking about the job. And the most impressive thing about this person, for me, was that as they were talking about Hester's Way, they genuinely loved Hester's Way. They didn't see Hester's Way as a mission project. And I said it's really unusual for me to hear Christians who go, I love Hester's Way, not I love the fact that people go and tell people about Jesus and Hester's Way. Because actually we need to love where we are. We need to love the people in this community. And that's the point that we can begin to see real change. And the question is will you choose to sacrifice to be part of it? So let's just pray. Jesus, we thank you that actually your sacrifice was amazing. Your sacrifice was more than we could ever imagine. And you call us to that same life of sacrifice. And Jesus, we know that it's easy not to sacrifice. It's easy to keep things for ourselves, to not to go beyond ourselves, but to actually live a comfortable life rather than being uncomfortable and sacrificing for other people. But Father, just pray you help us. In each of us, that it may not be a supposedly big thing, but being willing to be the first person to talk to the person who's lonely. To be the person willing to help those in need. To be the person willing to sacrifice both small and big things in order to demonstrate that you love this community. That you have a hope for them that they may not have for themselves. You have a love for them that they may not know. But we want to introduce them to your love, because as people meet you, they just fall in love with you. Because you are amazing and everything you've done is amazing. So help us live lives which are sacrificial and introduce other people to you.